بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. To complete the discussions on the things that invalidate the prayer, there's a brief section in which Imam Shurunbulali rahimahullah ta'ala mentions that what doesn't invalidate the prayer and what's the basic principle? That ما ليس عملا كثيرا, that which is not excessive action. An excessive action, as we said, relates to speech, eating, drinking, or movement. You don't have to speak in the prayer. So speech is quite strict. Eating and drinking, you don't have to eat and drink. Okay? So a little is not excused. As for action, it is excessive action that breaks. So he tells us rahimahullah ta'ala, فصل لو نظر المصلي إلى مكتوب وفهمه. So all of these things, as he says, the khabar is لا تفسد. The prayer is not invalidated. If the one praying looks at something written and understands it, this does not break the prayer, but is disliked for several reasons. One, that if you left the recommended way of looking, which is to look down, right? It's a slight action of the eyes. So there's dislikedness in it, as we will see, but it does not break the prayer. If you read it, it would break the prayer. Read it out. قرأ. Right? Though this requires caution. Some of the early Muslims considered this to break the prayer. However, the words of the early Muslims are tricky. And what they mean by expressions like this is that it doesn't break the prayer itself. How would we understand it? It vitiates reward. It drastically diminishes the reward. Because how are you in a state of khashiyah or khushu', reverence or humbleness in prayer, if you're reading things during the prayer? Okay. That's number one. Number two, أو أكل ما بين أسنانه, or if one ate something that is between one's teeth. وكان دون الحمصة, and is less than a chickpea, because we saw that if what you eat can be from outside, inexcusable, unless absolutely unavoidable. Storm, etc., those kinds of scenarios. From inside the mouth, it would break unless small, because what's already in the mouth and it's small could be difficult to avoid. Even if you brushed, you could have something lodged between your teeth, etc. Okay. بلا عمل كثير, if it was without excessive action. Excessive action, what's the criteria for excessive action? Yeah, it's the onlooker criterion. ما يستكثره الناظر. That if an onlooker came not knowing that you're praying, they would think that you are not praying. Okay. And another one, أو مر مار في موضع سجوده, or if someone passes by their place of prostration. This does not break the prayer. And we'll look at the section on taking a sutra when we come to it, but it doesn't break the prayer. Because your prayer is invalidated by your action. So let's say your infant decided to get naked in front of you. They took their diaper off and they started waving their diaper in the air and they're naked. Seeing them naked, does it break your prayer? No. let alone seeing someone else naked, right? Doesn't break your prayer because it's not of the invalidators of the prayer. If you are praying very quietly, you're traveling and you stayed with somebody, and within your line of sight is somebody, your friend, they came out of the bed and they're changing their pajamas. They're in your line of sight. Just close your eyes. But if you did see them, does it affect your prayer? No. It's not an invalidator. You shouldn't be looking towards them because you can't see unless they're a spouse, you can't see them uncovered. But it doesn't break the prayer. But that would be like seeing something outside the prayer unnecessarily. Now, if someone passing by will look at the fiqh of it, it does not affect the prayer itself. However, it is recommended to take a sutra. It's a sunnah. There's two scenarios. If someone could reasonably pass by, firstly, the sunnah is to stand close to a wall or a fixed barrier. That's the sunnah, when you have a choice. Because one, that's what the Prophet ﷺ did. And it's further from distraction. If you're praying in a place where people could pass by in front of you, it is specifically from the sunnah to take a barrier, a sutra. And we look at the fiqh of it, it should be raised, etc., or the best one can. And even if you don't think someone will pass by in front of you, then it is generally recommended or good to take a barrier. And we'll be seeing that after the disliked acts of the prayer. Then he tells us, rahimahullah, so he says, وَإِنْ أَثِمَ الْمَارِ, even if the one passing in front of you may be sinful. And that is if they pass immediately in front of you, whether or not you had a barrier. The immediately in front would be within your place of prostration. And it was avoidable. And so there's scenarios, we'll see them there. So the one passing by, we'll look at their fiqh when it's coming. But the basic thing is, if there's sutra, you walk around the sutra. If there isn't, you can walk past the place of prostration. Okay. وَلَا تَفْسُدُ أي صَلَاتُهُ بِنَظَرِهِ إِلَى فَرْجِ الْمُطَلَّقَ بِشَهْوَةٍ. This is an issue that comes up from the fiqh related to marriage. وَإِن ثَبَتَ بِهِ الرَّجْعَةِ. So firstly, just as a general principle, looking at someone naked does not break your prayer. If you saw them, it's not related to the prayer itself. If you engage in excessive action, it's the excessive action that would break it. Just looking does not break the prayer. Whatever you're looking at, whether you saw some writing, the seeing it break the prayer? No. Someone asked, and this is, that can I watch the soccer game while praying? You should not. It will diminish your reward. It's against the sunnah, etc., etc. But does it in itself break the prayer? No. Does reading something and understanding it break the prayer? No. But it's blameworthy. We'll see it's blameworthy. But it doesn't break the prayer. Unless you start reading. So if you're praying and the cricket game is going on, or the soccer game is going on, or whatever is going on, does that break the prayer? Even if you glanced? No. But it's makruh. And it vitiates, it's against the very soul of the prayer, and you may end up sinful. Valid, but sinful. But it doesn't break the prayer. But if you're praying and you start watching the game and you interrupt the prayer, So you came out from ruku' and you noticed the game, say Sami Allahu liman hamda Rabbana lakal hamd, and you say Allahu Akbar because whoever scored a goal. Now that's excessive action, because the one who saw you after Rabbana lakal hamd, looking away, saying Allahu Akbar, would you think that your friend is praying? No. You think they're watching the game and celebrating. So don't do those kinds of things. Alhamdulillah, Muslims generally don't do this kind of thing, but don't do it. Okay. So, mere looking is disliked but doesn't break the prayer. So, similarly, the prayer is not invalidated by looking at the intimate, private parts of one's divorced wife, even if it's with desire, according to the chosen action. And that is front or rear, private part itself, uncovered, even if it's with desire. So, of course, the divorced woman, and this is she does iddah in her husband's home. But let's say this took place, you can think of the scenario. This does not break the prayer, because it's just another act of looking, even if there was desire. Now, looking with slight action would be somewhat disliked. Looking when it reaches the level of fidgeting and distraction would be prohibitively disliked. Only when it's excessive action that would break the prayer. The principles of invalidation, excessive action versus what's disliked. Now, separate from that is the issue of, even though this would affirm the raj'ah, talaq can be of two types: irrevocable or revocable, ba'in or raj'i. Revocable talaq is one where the husband can take the wife back without a new nikah. The talaq al-raj'i, the revocable divorce, can be revoked. They can be raj'ah, either spoken by saying, I take you back, or by action, which is anything that you could only conceivably do in the context of marriage, like kissing with desire, etc. And looking with desire is from that. So if this happens, some case, Jack and Jill got divorced, so Jill decided to uncover. So when he came up from sujood, he saw her farj, al-dakhil, and he had shahwa. That would constitute raj'ah. She's back. Of course, it would be sinful for her to uncover in this way, and this is not a sunnah way of coming back together. Right? They should come to an agreement. But if it happens, two separate things. Just the act of looking would not break the prayer. The raj'ah would take place, because the raj'ah, revoking the divorce in a revocable divorce, talaq al-raj'i, takes place by word or action. The words indicating, I take you back. Actions is anything that cannot be done except in marriage between them. So that's, you can review Quduri or wherever related to Raja. So these are the actions that do not invalidate the prayer. And some of these are mentioned because people asked during the recent pandemic, etc., that can I be in a meeting while praying? Can you? It doesn't invalidate. So let's say you're in a meeting and you got earphones on. So you're praying, muted. Is it valid to be in the meeting? Is the prayer valid? Validity of the meeting is a separate thing. Yeah, there's nothing that breaks the prayer. But we'll see the principle. كل ما يشغل البال ويذهب بالخشوع. Everything that busies the mind and affects khushu' takes the soul of the prayer. But does it break the prayer? But it's very grave. There's an answer. See the Abdul Latif, you owe me book and link requests, correct? Yeah. So we can add one to the list, but you can just post this directly, which is, can I wear noise cancelling headphones while praying? So someone asked Sheikh Yahya this question. He was so aghast that he asked me to answer. I said, why do you want me to answer such an obvious answer? He said, how could someone do this? I said, well, just answer the question. He was too shocked that people would do this. But if you're wearing headphones or earphones and you're in a meeting, now there is a dispensation here, in the sense that if you're stuck in a meeting, can you just mute it, pray, and continue if you can't leave? Yes. And slight action without need, slight action with need, and distraction when unavoidable is allowed. And there's many precedents for this, as we'll see. Can you drive your car while praying? Can you drive your car while praying? I didn't say about praying. What can you pray while driving? If you're the driver. No. Which prayer can you pray while driving? Nafil, on condition that you be outside city limits. Outside city limits. So you can pray nafil. But if you're driving and there's a bend in the road, can you turn? Yes, because otherwise you're going to kill yourself. Right? Can you change lanes? Yes. Can you check the rear view mirror? Yes. Right? So the slight actions that are needed to ride. Classically, if they're riding a donkey, mule, horse, or camel, the actions, including nudging the animal along, etc., slight actions when there's need. But if you're climbing your mule up a mountain, is that a good idea to be praying while you're doing that, as opposed to going down a straight path? Because if you're going down a straight path, not much to do. Like it's in autoimmune control, right? You just hold on and go straight. But you're climbing a mountain with your mule. You could, as long as you can stay within. As long as you can stay within slight actions. You don't have to face the Qibla either. This is all in Maraqi Sa'adat, folks. It's not anything advanced. Okay. So, slight act, but the need should be genuine. Genuine and difficult to avoid otherwise. So, nafil prayers, it's easier. It's easier. But don't, there's a decorum to the deen. Don't. Like, if you're going to the toilet, excuse yourself, go to the toilet, and then come back. Of course, so at the same time, of course, since we're talking about meetings, it's important to be careful that work is an amana. Work is an amana. When you are in work hours, that time is an amana. Doing other things beyond what your employer would approve of is haram. It's haram. And the earnings from, so number one, it's khiyana. It's khiyana. It is the opposite of amana. And number two, that money is mal haram. The earnings for those hours are haram. Now there's some things then nobody would care. Nobody would care. Right? In the sense that, you're doing your work. If you checked the score, would anyone really care? No. And the custom changes. However, there's good custom, there's sound custom, and there's unsound custom. If you're doing a meeting with some team members and you're trying to explain the new project, and one of them is actually listening in to the England versus Afghanistan cricket game and not really paying attention to you, every once in a while, he'll ask a question. If you're asked that, is this acceptable if you're their manager? No. Now, well, people do this, but we have to be aware that there is sound custom and unsound custom. If you're living in some European countries, people kiss each other at work, men and women. Strangers, they kiss each other on the cheek to greet each other. But that's the custom. No. But there's sound custom and unsound custom. So this is something that is deeply neglected. What you contractually agree to, you are bound by. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. Beginning of Surah An-Nisa. What you believe, fulfill your covenants. Covenants there. Uqud here is everything you resolve to. It's the lughawi meaning. It's not necessarily just contracts, but it's contracts, commitments, promises, pledges, etc. So there are many spiritual guides that I know who take great caution in this. That, the beginning of the spiritual path is what? Is raddul madhalim. That you redress debts owed to Allah, you redress debts owed to people. That's the beginning of the spiritual path. One of the things, as we know, the hadith of travel, of the traveler, right? Inna Allah tayyibun la yaqbalu illa tayyiba. Allah is pure and accepts only the pure. And then the Prophet ﷺ, this ثم ذكر الرجل. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the man يطيل السفر, on a lengthy journey, أشعث أغبر, right? Dirty and disheveled with أغبر, with غبار, with their, disheveled and full of dust, right? Dirty and disheveled. يمد يديه إلى السماء, in distress, raising their hands to the sky. Now, madda is to stretch out, right? So you can raise your hands. But يمد يديه إلى السماء أي يرفعها إلى السماء. So that's distress. It's not just regular asking. Why would you, if you're making dua, why would you raise your hands like this? Just to stretch out? Calisthenics? No, you raise your hands higher. It's sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ did it in times of distress. يَمُدُّ يَدَيْهِ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ, stretching his hands to the sky. Ya Rabb, Ya Rabb, O Lord, O Lord. وَمَطْعَمُهُ حَرَامٌ وَمَلْبَسُهُ حَرَامٌ وَغُذِّيَ بِالْحَرَامِ. Their food was from the unlawful, their drink was from the unlawful, and they were nourished by the unlawful. فَأَنَّا يُسْتَجَابُ لَهُ. So from where would they be answered? So that shart al-ijaba is طيب الكسب, is that you earn from the halal. And this is one of the key aspects. Well, I did my work. No, but you weren't contracted just to do your work. That could be a different type of contract. If you are bound by certain things, you are bound by them. If you didn't like it, negotiate. But if you agreed to it, you're bound by it. Now, a lot of people seem to think that this is optional, but it's not. It's not. It's not. Sayyidina Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Shaybani, the great student of Imam Abu Hanifa, one of the two Sahibain, and the great transmitter of the Hanafi school, the teacher of Imam Shafi'i, the student of Imam Malik, one of the transmitters of the Muwatta. The books of Zahir al-Riwayah, whose books are they? Imam Muhammad al-Hasan al-Shaybani. And he was known for his piety. He was known for other things too. Amongst the other things he was known for was that he was rather large in size. So Imam Shafi'i said, "Ma aflaha saminun qat." No plump man ever succeeded. Illa an yakuna Muhammad al-Hasan, unless it's Muhammad al-Hasan. He was also known for his eloquence. Imam Shafi'i, who disagreed vehemently with his teacher, and they debated. He told him, he said about him, لو أردت أن أقول إن القرآن نزل بلسان محمد الحسن لقلت. So I wanted to say that the Quran was revealed on the tongue of Muhammad al-Hasan, like meaning, on that's how eloquent he is. It's hyperbole, of course, because the Quran is inimitable. Imam Muhammad al-Hasan was also exceedingly careful about his time. And he's sort of this central point in the history of Islamic scholarship. Student of Imam Abu Hanifa, but also studied under actually most of his study was under Abu Yusuf. But he'd also taken from Imam Malik. And he's one of the narrators of the Muwatta, which is compiled as the Muwatta of Imam Muhammad. And he was one of the teachers of Imam Shafi'i. And Imam Ahmad took from some of his students, but Imam Ahmad read all his books. Ahmad ibn Hanbal. So he's sort of this focal point of the four madhabs in this sense. Brilliant. Asad ibn Furat, one of the great students of Imam Malik, went to him, asked him for time. He said, I don't have any time. Of course, people were serious. They asked. So what do you do all day? He said, I teach from sunrise till after nightfall. And my time is all full. From Fajr till after nightfall. So he said, what do you do before Fajr? He said, I worship my Lord. So he said, so what do you do when you get ready for your tahur, for your purification? So he was silent. He said, I will come to you at that time. Asad ibn Furat. Muhammad al-Hasan is a faqih. They don't, you can't just get things past them. So he said, we'll see. And he did not miss a day. And Muhammad al-Hasan gave him that time because لا ينال العلم متكبر ولا مستحي. Knowledge cannot be attained by the proud or the shy. If you want something, seek it. Right? Seek it. And that's Muhammad al-Hasan. Muhammad al-Hasan, and that's why it's important to read works like The Value of Time in Islam, which is actually translated into English by Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, قيمة الزمان عند العلماء, and his work صفحات من صبر العلماء. The ulama were strict. Some of the ulama would keep guards outside their classes. So when time came, actually, and they say it's not the time for the class to begin, but khalas, now all the students are supposed to be there. They used to close the gates, close the door to the dar. If you wanted, be serious. So there's two students who were travelers. They got to the class, so they dug under the wall to get, because it's sand. So they dug under and they made it. But apparently all class, you could hear the sound of the sand going down their clothing. They're serious. There's these travelers, they arrived in a town, they didn't have anything to eat, so they bought a fish. But they were going from lesson to lesson, so they kept the fish with them. But they didn't get to actually cook it because they're so busy. So the third day it started rotting. So they had to be told that you have to get rid of this now because you cannot eat it anymore. But that's the seriousness. Anyways, Imam Muhammad al-Hasan, despite being known for his righteousness, was asked, لِمَا لَا تُؤَلِّفُ فِي الزُّهُدِ? Why don't you write any books on zuhud, on renunciation? What did he say? He said, ألفت في المعاملات. أو كما قال. He said, I've written works in transaction, both in the rulings of transaction, but the practical guidance on transaction. But people, our religion is not about song and dance, right? Our song, those are meant to inspire us to follow Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? The intelligent person, okay, understands that. So that is something to keep in mind. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Do you have any questions?